Hello, welcome to the webinar. I hope you're all set with your coffee and ready for 50 minutes or so discussion about business, which is a topic that I'm sure interests all of us. And the topic today is we're going to be talking about how to make your business scalable. This webinar is going to introduce you to the Scaleup formula, which is a method to remove your business's reliance on you and therefore make it more scalable. My name's Nick Bettis. I've been helping business owners to run their businesses better for over 10 years. I'll do a brief intro shortly. Now, because you've taken part in this webinar, I'm assuming you're a successful business owner who's grown your business to a certain size, but now you're starting to feel that continued growth is getting more difficult and putting you under a bit more strain. Lots of my clients used to feel the same way. Today, I'm going to be showing you the formula that I use to help them overcome this problem. Along the way, I'll be illustrating these techniques with some stories from actual work with clients. On that topic, I've worked with around 100 clients over the last 10 years. They've got grit, resilience, they're inventive, brave, and business owners power the economy, often with little thanks and recognition. So changing a business, it can be frustrating for the owner, frustrating for the coach, but most of the time it's great fun and pretty inspiring. So hopefully these stories will give you some insight into how this works in the real world with real business owners. So back to the slide. Today we're going to be addressing these points. Why most owner-managed businesses reach a revenue ceiling and then flatline. What's different about the businesses and business owners that grow beyond this? And what is this simple formula that you can follow to break through this ceiling and make your business scalable? By the way, I should say you've got a chat window on your screen. It might be hidden with a red tab and 3 dots on. But feel free to comment or ask a question at any time. I'll pick up the questions at the end of the webinar, answer as many as I can. But like most of these things, you'll get more out of it if you put more in. So if you've got some comments, questions, opinions, let's get them out there, and we can address those. Okay, I said I was going to introduce myself briefly. So my background is in these large businesses, and in essence, senior roles focused on performance. So driving performance of existing businesses, sometimes merger and acquisition, and then driving performance of the results of that. So I did that for longer than I care to remember. But for the last 10 years, I've been doing this, working with small businesses. When I'm not being a coach and consultant, I play golf, I play in a local band, that's me, the tall, handsome one on the left there. I'm a Portsmouth supporter. Here's a picture of my sons and me on Wembley Way when we won the FA Cup. So I'll just give a couple of minutes for all the Southampton supporters to leave the webinar. And I'm speaking to you from my office, which is here in just west of London in the south of England. Okay, introduction's over. Let's start with why many business owners get stuck at a certain size. This is called their revenue ceiling. Here are the symptoms. For some reason, you come up against a ceiling beyond which you cannot grow the business. So you might work longer hours, work harder, try different marketing and sales techniques, you get more employees in, but nothing seems to make a difference. Nothing seems to move the needle on growth. You may also start to get some quality issues, with the new employees, and that drives you to getting more involved, being more hands-on, being a bit more of a control freak. So going back into working in the business, you may start to miss out on sales opportunities simply because you don't have the bandwidth to deal with them, or if you do win them, you don't really have the bandwidth to do a proper job on them. A great example of this ceiling was one of my clients who was an electrical contractor, he never managed to grow his business more than to a bigger level than 16 electricians. And he'd reached that size, several times, gone up and down. And he was convinced it was either something to do with the market or possibly something to do with the nature of electricians. But with my help, he started to realize that the problem might lie more in the way he ran his business. And so that was gave him pause for thought, but I actually gave him some hope as well, because that's something you can change. A market is difficult to change, but the way you run your business is relatively easy to change. Here's a diagram. So I call this science. It's not really science because it's a graph, but anyway, here's a diagram. It shows what happens. So your revenue grows over time and then levels off at this thing we call the revenue ceiling. The issue is that you, the owner, are still doing and deciding pretty much everything in that business. So you become the bottleneck. There are only so many things that that one person can deal with. So many employees, transactions, decisions, and you could think of it as you've reached your plate spinning limit. The problem is not the market. Few SMEs have 100% market share or anything like it. So that, there's always more growth opportunity in the market. You just need to find a way to handle it. So here's some good news. It doesn't have to be that way. Otherwise, all we'd have would be small businesses in the world. So clearly some businesses and some business owners find a way to overcome this limitation. And these businesses are different. They're unchained from the owner's own capacity. They're no longer limited to what the owner can control themselves. So I've underlined really the key messages of this webinar on this slide. So these scalable businesses are built of systems, which is a fancy word for basically repeatable standardized processes. These systems in turn are operated by employees, and these employees are autonomous and accountable. So they make their own decisions and they're responsible for results. So the owners of these scalable businesses have realized that to grow a business, you must develop the employees. Because you can always hire more employees, but there's only ever going to be one of you. So that's how we get scalable businesses. That's what this webinar is about. So that's an easy slide to write. How do you actually go about doing it? Well, I mentioned at the top of the webinar a formula, and here is the formula. This is the Scaleup formula. This is what defines scalable businesses. Standardized processes, worked by accountable employees, and managed by routine, regular reviews equals scalable businesses. That's it. Now, we're going to spend the rest of the webinar understanding how you can apply this formula to your business. So, we're going to start here with standardized processes. What do we mean by standardized processes? How do we actually create these things? Well, pretty much everyone will know what the word process means, but it can get a bit trickier when it comes to your own business and trying to define, what is a process and what isn't a process. Here are the rules, or here are some rules that you can use to help you define a process. So a process has a clear start, which is an event or trigger, maybe a sale or a project completion. It has a clear end. It has a single deliverable or output, one thing a process produces. It has a single owner, that is one employee who is responsible for the results of that process. There may be, many employees involved in it, but only one person who is responsible for the results. It is significant to the business. You do have, minor processes, but what we're talking about are processes that make a difference to your business. But having said that, it can be large or small. It can be simple or complicated. It can still be a significant process for your business. And the final point, again underlined, is a process is a unit of delegation. So if you keep that in mind, when you're defining a process, you're defining something that you can successfully delegate to someone. We'll talk a bit more about delegation in a couple of slides. So it probably helps to have some examples. Let's look at a few processes and decide whether or not they are in fact processes. So sales, is that a process? It could be pretty big. Sales can be quite complicated. Is it a process? Yeah, it's a process. It qualifies. Simple input or a clearly definable input and a single output, which is a sale or perhaps a loss. Okay, so sales makes it. What about admin? Well, not really. Admin's just a bucket. It's too complicated, all sorts of things going on inside admin. But within admin, things like invoicing and payroll, yeah, they definitely qualify. They are simple processes, start, finish, single owner, measurable result. Marketing. So again, marketing is pretty big, bit messy, lots of things going on, increasingly complicated marketing nowadays. Does it qualify? Well, it does. The input, which is generally money or some kind of requirement, and the output would be your, let's say, marketing qualified leads or inquiries, whatever you call them. Customer service, not really. Again, it's a bit of a bucket. Could be all sorts of things in customer service, like help desk, yes. Goods out, yes. Both of those qualify as processes. So I hope those examples are giving you a sort of feel for when you're thinking about your business, what qualifies as a process, what qualifies as this unit of delegation. Okay, what do we mean by standardized? We mean processes that are all described in the same way, that are all documented and run in a consistent, repeatable way. So the kind of things that you could teach someone to do, or you could measure how well it's working. So that's what we mean by standardized. And we're going to define or talk through on this slide how we actually describe a process. So a process has inputs at the front end. So typically those will be information or raw materials or labor or money or some combination of these things. Those inputs go into the process. Here it shows a couple of spanners just to show you there's something going on. And out of that process, we get an output. And we get, don't forget, a single output. A definition of a process is it has a single output, okay? Because that's what we measure. If you find you've got more than one output, then you're probably looking at more than one process. You may need to go back and look at it and see if you need to split that down. Well, now, unfortunately, in the real world, some of that output might not be perfect. For instance, if we're talking about invoices or the process is invoicing, then this might be invoice queries. If this is the process is sales, then this defect might be a lost deal. And by the way, I mean, just identifying and measuring defects can have a major impact on productivity and perhaps customer service, depending what it is. So one of my clients, as an example, she runs a business that sells computer peripherals online. And they had a problem with returns. I think it's a kind of fairly standard problem with online businesses, but they were getting more than they should have been getting. And her solution, we talked through lots of sort of fancy ideas about this, but the solution was she put a large sheet of graph paper on the wall above the desk of the dispatch clerk and asked this guy to mark each day with a red pen the number of returns on this graph. And guess what? Returns dropped dramatically. So, just measuring things as a habit of driving improvement. Okay, on with our process description. Every process has a lead time, or sometimes we call a cycle time. So how long does it take on average from the input, the start of the process, to the end of the process? Okay, so you can imagine invoicing. From invoice to cash in the bank, you might say it's 30 days on average. Every process also has a balance, sometimes called a backlog or stock. So in sales, this would be your sales pipeline. In logistics, this might be the warehouse stock value. In credit control, this might be debtors or debtor days. Okay, so that's our process description. Here's a useful management tip. Okay, every process in every business in the world can be described this way, can be measured this way. And if you can measure and describe a process, you can manage it. And if you can manage it, you can improve it. So if you, in your business, understand how to describe your processes like this, you can apply this to all of the processes in your business. So if you've got a problem, you're starting to get to the simple questions you ask, to identify why there's a problem, what to do about it. So I'm kind of giving away the consultancy secrets here, but this is one of them. And this is why standardized processes are so important for making your business scalable. In fact, you can think of your business as a collection of connected processes, with the output of one going to the input of another. So here's a manufacturing business, okay? And you can see these are called the line of business processes for an obvious reason. So we go from marketing through to money in the bank, each process feeding the next one down. Support processes, link into these line of business processes. So we've got 2 or 3 shown on the diagram here, and you'll see that means that some processes have more than one input. So manufacturing, you have a design and you have some kind of purchasing process that feeds into actually building whatever it is you build. You also have back office processes, and these are not directly linked to line of business, but often grouped under something called maybe finance and admin. So if you think about building a scalable business, one of the models in your mind is that my business is made of processes that all actually behave in the same way, even though they're different in detail. And that allows me to build and scale up my business, as opposed to it being a bit of a sort of a rat's nest that nobody fully understands, and we can't really explain or talk about it. You can't communicate about it. Okay, drink from my Pompey mug, excuse me. Okay, I just want to introduce briefly here a thing called the Scaleup Formula Toolbox. You could devise, nothing's stopping you, devise your own way to define processes, list processes, assess employees, all the other things we're going to talk about this morning. But it's sometimes a lot easier if someone's given you, basically the templates just to fill in the blank. So that's what this toolbox is. And here's a couple of examples. We talked about how you identify processes. This is a tool that allows you to list processes in your business and assess them, and how well they perform, how important it is that you improve them, how you might improve them. And this is another tool that allows you to do the thing we just looked at. This is how you a standard description for any process in your business. So you're probably thinking, I already understand the process in my business. I know how to describe them. Why do I need tools? And well, okay, you might not. But the great thing about these management tools, in particular in this toolbox, is it allows you to stand back, take a different perspective on things. So get back, away from your assumptions, and it also allows you to take a standard way of looking at it, so you can communicate. And a lot of what we're talking about in terms of making your business scalable is about improving communication with employees. So using these standardized tools gets everyone on the same playing field, I suppose. Okay, now I want to move on and talk about accountable employees. And again, let's start with saying, well, what do we mean by accountable employees? So accountable employees do more than turn up and carry out the tasks that you allocate to them. Accountable employees take responsibility for the results of the process or processes that they own. And therefore they take responsibility for improving processes. And therefore they have the autonomy and authority to do this. That's what we're talking about as accountable employees. Now, if you're lucky, you might already have someone like that. But most business owners at this point in the conversation, excuse me, struggle to see this in their employees. They struggle to see their employees, the people they work with every day, becoming accountable. And, you know, let's be honest, not all your employees will want to or be able to. So we're not saying everybody's going to be a superhero. However, you know, my experience working with hundreds of businesses and probably, you know, thousands of employees is that many, maybe most employees are limited primarily by the expectations and the need for control and the management approach of you, the business owner. Once you give them an opportunity and support, most employees will welcome additional responsibility and blossom. So there's, you know, a positive message. It's much easier to work with, you know, on this scalable process, much easier to start and work with and develop accountability in those employees who already have a positive attitude and, you know, have shown some willingness to see things your way. And, you know, it's much more difficult to try and persuade, let's say, those people are a bit more set in their ways, a bit more negative. So, you know, you build accountable employees out. So the aim, your overriding aim, your number one objective when you're building a scalable business is to build over time a critical mass around you of positive, accountable employees who understand what you're trying to do and are on board with it and want to be part of it. So you leave people you might call energy sappers or assassins, you leave them till last. You know, you build up this team around you that makes it much easier to take on the people that are less keen. When you're assessing employees, you know, you won't include everyone. Well, probably you won't include everyone. You're really just including the people that you think are going to run processes that usually they'll generally report direct to you. They may already have the title manager of some kind. And you might have one or two people that you've spotted in the business. You think this person shows a bit of gumption, and I've got plans for them. And you might include those in this assessment, but you wouldn't include everybody. You don't involve the employees. This is not an appraisal system, so there's no sort of one-to-ones asking them how they feel about the business or anything like that. It's just you sitting down and saying, okay, I need to assess my people in order to start to develop this team of accountable employees. Who's going to be first, second, third, and so on. And once again, you're taking this structured approach. I'll show you a tool in a minute, but taking a structured approach to this will not only make sure you've got the right criteria for this, but it'll address some of your assumptions and make it easier for you to, if necessary, communicate with people how they might need to change their approach. So it's going to give you a better result and not take really much longer than just relying on gut feel. Now here's a slide that shows you the criteria, the kinds of criteria you should be assessing against when you're thinking about developing accountable employees. And you can see the balance is kind of 75%, and some more science. The balance, most of your thinking is about attitude, not experience and knowledge. Clearly, someone needs to know enough about what they're doing to run a process, or enough about what other people are doing to run the process. And clearly, they need to have a good level of interpersonal skills in terms of organization, communication, and people, you know, giving them some credibility as a leader. But primarily, this is about attitude. Same as when you hire someone, hire for attitude. So when you've chosen your first employee, how do you actually help them become more accountable? What are the steps you take? We're going to cover a 6-step delegation process in a minute, but here are the essentials of how you make someone more accountable. And you'll see from this slide that the process you choose to delegate to them is really a vehicle for developing that employee's accountability. So this is all about the people. The processes, yes, we want to improve them. Yes, you know, they're important, and over time will become more important. But initially, it's about I need something where I can develop someone's confidence and accountability, and I'm going to find a process to do that for them. So you choose the people you want to develop first, and then you choose a process that they own as the vehicle to develop them. Of course, you know, the process will quickly, as it improves, provide a benefit to the business, but that's not what you're starting out to do. Now, in the real world, this choice often presents itself differently. It's not as clear-cut as perhaps I've laid it out. So I'll give you an example. One of my clients, he runs an engineering consultancy. He had a real problem with his project process, which is his line of business process. He had three people with the title project manager who were supposed to be running projects and therefore, you know, driving billing, driving the commercial health of the business. But actually, they were engineers and they spent their time doing engineering stuff, really at the expense of the commercial results. And to be fair to them, as you know, this is often the way. To be fair to them, the systems in that business, the processes in that business, such as they were, didn't really focus on the commercial outcome. They were engineering processes, so it wasn't their fault. Anyway, of these three project managers, a bit like the three bears, one was a bit set in his ways and negative about change. One was brand new and not very experienced, and one was just right. He had some experience, but he demonstrated innovation, willingness to do things differently. You know, he understood the commercial side mattered. So my client picked this guy, didn't he? Now he could have gone and sort of taken on all three. Project managers said, we're going to change the way we do processes, got them all together and said, drawn it out on a whiteboard and changed it. And he would have struggled because there had been a sort of critical mass really of laggards, of people that didn't want to do it. But by picking one person, they were able to work together. My client ran a few projects himself. So they built a way of running projects commercially effectively. And then it's much easier for him, it was much easier for him to go back to the other project managers and get them on board with something that was proven and working. So you work with the person who's going to help you succeed, not with, you don't take on the people who are going to be more challenging. And, you know, I'm going to introduce a word here to the webinar. You might not like it, but the word is politics. And creating a scalable business is, in some respects, a political process. And, you know, politics isn't confined to massive corporate businesses. Politics is really necessary as a skill to create a scalable business. And there's an example of politics, if you like. Okay, having selected your first employee to work with on accountability and a process you're going to use, the next step is to delegate the process to this person. This doesn't have to be done with a lot of fanfare. It might strike them as odd if they believe they're already in charge of this process. So it's more often the case it's a, you know, position of conversation as some sort of review or clarification. But what, you know, must happen is this redelegation or delegation does need to be a fairly fundamental change. Merely confirming that someone's in charge of something and having a chat about measurement is not going to do it. So the change is often about authority or the ability to decide. So another of my clients had a real problem in the manufacturing part of his business. He didn't want to start the scale-up formula there because the workshop manager was awkward, not to put too fine a point on it. So instead he started with his design guy, who was positive and innovative, actually a contractor. It didn't matter, he worked for him full time. So he worked with the designer to define the design process in the way we've just described, inputs, outputs, lead times, and so forth. Now, as they did this, it became apparent that lots of the problems in design were actually caused in sales, poor specification in the first place. And so what happened was that the designer was given the authority to set and enforce specification quality criteria. So the person that runs a process controls the quality of what comes in. This is a huge step in terms of his authority, but it enables that guy to become accountable for results. But if you ask him to take responsibility and then keep giving him rubbish to work with, it's not going to work. So there's a change in authority involved in delegation. And here are the 6 steps I mentioned for a successful delegation process. First of all, agree what's in it for them. Don't start with money. So if you've picked the right people through your assessment process, this conversation starts around career development, more responsibility, being able to develop as a person as well as an employee. It may include a conversation about money, and there's nothing wrong with that at the end of it. So it may mean a conversation around, okay, if you achieve such and such, then there's a pay rise or a change of title. But don't start there, otherwise the conversation will be on the wrong foot. But you do need to agree what's in it for them, otherwise why would they bother? Okay, be clear on scope and what success looks like. We've kind of covered that. So this is what the process is. It starts, finishes. This is what we're talking about delegating. This is how we measure the outputs. Make it official, announce it, make the authority official. Do not, like one of my clients, kind of keep it secret, just quote, in case it doesn't work out, unquote, because it was guaranteed not to work out if you do that. So you've got to give them confidence and authority and make it official. Make sure they own the time scale. So there'll be a plan. If you delegate something and you want that process changed, improved, and maybe there's a new system, different resources, changed ways of doing things, this person needs a plan and a time scale to achieve what you've asked them to achieve. And they must own that time scale. So they need to come up with a plan. Provide training, resources, and support if and when needed. Don't try and get a quart out of a pint pot, load more on someone and give them no extra time or extra resources. So make sure you're supporting them to succeed. And finally, we're going to talk about reviewing, but finally, make sure you review, coach regularly with these people, probably daily to start with, then weekly, then monthly. So you must give these people support and coaching. Okay, now a quick return to the Scaleup from the toolbox. We've got the Assess Employees tool, which I mentioned. This is a way of thinking through what you're looking for in employees. I'm going to repeat the point I made earlier. The tools don't make a decision for you. They just help you think it through. Okay. The Choose Process tool actually looks at the process assessment, the employee assessment, brings it together and says, you might like to think about these processes as being the first place to start developing your scalable business. It's only a suggestion. The Delegate Process tool is a checklist for the delegation process. It's got some examples and guidance here. Okay, let's move on and talk about routine review. Reviews are what over time makes accountability happen. So often the failure, I can point to a number of clients, but one of my clients, the failure is in review, not setting targets. He got to this stage, he was kind of reluctant to introduce reviews, and I couldn't get to the bottom of it. So we talked it through, and it turns out what happens over the years, he probably set a few objectives, introduced various KPIs and things, and never reviewed them. So they'd never kind of followed through, never been achieved. And so he felt, he was worried, probably with reason, that his employees wouldn't really take this seriously. So you really have to review to nail this accountability. You must do regular reviews. They reinforce responsibility results, but you're doing this in a supportive way. It's a coaching conversation about how you improve performance. It is not beating someone up because they haven't hit a particular number. You don't want to get this into blame and excuse, which is not going to be helpful. You're trying to build their confidence and build your confidence in them. Useful reviews are not just a chat or an exchange of opinions. Excuse me. Neither are they an operational meeting to discuss current problems. So they're all too easy to fall into discussing, this project, that project, what Fred's doing next week, what customer X said about, product Y. That's a separate meeting. That's your weekly operational meeting. This is a meeting focused on improving performance of the process and improving the performance of the employee, the process owner, for the long term. So to do this, you've got to be based on numbers. In fact, the numbers we talked about previously on the process description slide. It's really important that the process owner owns these numbers. I'll give you a story to illustrate this. Another of my clients, they're two partners. They were at this point in the process, but they said to me they felt these reviews weren't really achieving much. They did the reviews with their branch managers. So the owners of the business presented a set of numbers each month and discussed them with the managers. But they said to me, we feel like we do all the talking and nothing changes. So we talked it through, and I suggested that a bit of a change. So firstly, they started to give the numbers, that is the reports, but the numbers in to the branch managers the day before the meeting. And then the way the meeting ran was they put a big flip chart at the front, and each manager had to put right on the flip chart their key numbers. And then this was a much more powerful way of doing it. To write those numbers up, they had to understand the numbers, they had to own them, and agree with those numbers rather than just sort of having them presented to them. So it's a simple, powerful change. And when that bedded in after a couple of months, I suggested that the owners started to ask some gentle questions, like why do you think that number is high or low, whatever it might be. And this takes accountability to the next stage. So your first level of accountability in these reviews is the process owner tells you the numbers, they present the numbers. And the next level is they explain the numbers. So to get them to explain, you have to ask some general questions. Okay, and that then leads into conversations about improvements. And if the process owner feels that they've led the discussion, or certainly been involved in the discussion, and came up with the action, they're far more likely to do that thing and make it stick and stand behind the results. A word about routine very quickly. These reviews should be scheduled, recurring every month. The moment you skip a review is the moment you undermine the importance of this whole process. So don't skip reviews. Most employees welcome routine. It's comforting. It's only people like you, entrepreneurs, that find routine a bit of a pain in the neck, but you'll just have to get over it. When you feel that the process owner is bought into responsibility, the review meetings are working well, and then it's time to start to introduce planning. And so for some employees, and actually for some business owners, planning is a bit of a strain, but it is necessary for two reasons. Firstly, if you want to improve process performance, you have to have targets, so you have to have a plan. Secondly, if you want to develop your employees into managers, that's about predicting the future. Management is about predicting the future. So, planning is necessary to develop the employees. Okay, a quick look at the tools around this area. So we've got a review process results tool. We've got a review, or rather introduce planning tool, actually same layout, same numbers. One looks backwards, one looks forwards. We've got this tool as well. This is actually the first tool in the toolbox. So we've been seeing glimpses of it as we've been working through. So this is the roadmap. These are the steps that you go through to make your business scalable. Okay. And you can see that we've so far covered these items. So we're down to the dotted line. And you also, I hope, grasp that you do these processes a number of times, in fact, once for each process. So you're repeating this with different people in different processes. There are a couple of stages left: strengthen structure and clarify purpose. So by this point, you've come a long way in the process. So you've achieved your first objective, which is to build a core of positive, accountable managers around you. Along the way, you develop some standardized processes that are scalable and measurable. I mean, your structure, however, is probably a little bit piecemeal. It's evolved along the way. You've perhaps developed people, changed job descriptions, perhaps reporting lines. But it's evolved, and now's the time to kind of step back, take a look at this and say, well, what structure do I need to run a larger business, to support the vision for my business? Now, and then make those changes. Now, in many cases, because of the way you've got there, the changes are sort of fairly cosmetic, a few tweaks here and there. But in other areas, you may have some more difficult decisions to make. You may have people that are simply not cutting it, got the wrong attitude, proven unable to make the journey. So, with the right people in the right seats, you can put a man on the moon. But if you've got the wrong people, every task becomes a challenge. The second aim of addressing structure is to start developing your management team. This is another conceptual leap for many employees. There's a difference between running a function well and then contributing to running a business. That's a conceptual, it's quite a leap for some people. And not all of your effective functional managers, people that run bits of business or bits of processes are going to actually contribute at this higher level. But some will, and some need to, because you'll be looking, for a successor there. So you have a choice about how far you develop a management team. It really depends how far you want to take the concept of scalable business and what your plans are for exit. So, if you don't have a management team, or until you have a management team capable of running the business without you, the business is still reliant on you and therefore still somewhat fragile, and it shuts off certain exit paths. So one of my clients runs a really successful business, years of strong growth, very capable and committed functional managers. But when he started to think about exit, think about retirement, it became clear that he was still responsible for all the strategic decisions. He's responsible for sort of joining things up across the business. So now he's having to delay retirement while he works on developing the management team and hopefully a successor. Okay, the last point on the roadmap is to clarify purpose. Now, shared compelling purpose is what drives great organizations. Many consultants or business coaches actually start their whole engagement, their process, by defining a vision or something similar. There's nothing wrong with this. Great. It's to talk to your employees about vision soon and often. That's great. But in truth, most employees will only really get engaged with this, only take it seriously when, A, they feel they've got a significant influence on the outcome of the vision. B, they have a direct impact on its achievement, and C, they've got some kind of personal stake in the outcome. Now, where you are now, with your accountable employees, that ticks all those boxes. So you've got a group of people around you who are really going to be engaged in developing this vision. Whereas doing it too early, you're not going to get so much out of it. So, but when you do get this shared coherent vision, the increased level of engagements will have a real multiplying effect on business performance. Okay, last visit to the toolbox. A couple more tools. This is a tool that helps you define structure, and this is a tool that helps you prepare for developing a vision, how you run a workshop and things like this. Vision's quite a tricky thing to do if you've never done something like that before. It's not, some people think it's not very British. There's a bit navel gazing element to it, but this is the way you can prepare for it. So, quite a useful tool. So, in summary, by this stage, you've achieved standardized processes run by motivated, accountable employees and routinely planned, reviewed, and improved. And in doing that, you've built an effective management team who are taking the burden off your shoulders, and you have a shared and compelling purpose, which is driving growth. So, that's a pretty nice picture of your business, I think. Nice thing to think about. Well, just about finished now. I would like to wrap up by spending a few minutes talking about getting started. How do you go about taking the first few steps in applying the Scaleup formula? So it'd be nice to think that you absorb everything that I'm talking to you about in this webinar, and you can go away and do it. But until I invent a machine to actually put that into people's brains, you're probably a little hazy about some of the details still. And so you've got really three options at the moment. I mean, option one is to do nothing. So you've heard me talk about what needs to change. You might think, oh, I can't be doing with that. Developing employees, working on processes. It seems it's not what I signed up to do. So I'm just going to accept my business is where it's going to stay, and I'm happy with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's what most business owners decide, over 99% of them. So fair enough. Your second option is to guess how to do it. This presentation gives you a lot of information. You could seek out other training, read books and so on, put together your own formula, your own roadmap. There are probably a couple of issues that leap out at you with this approach. Firstly, trial and error is messy, expensive, and time-consuming, and it kind of undermines. It'll undermine your own confidence and energy, and it also undermines employees' confidence in what's going on, reduce your credibility. And the second point is, well, why would you bother? You're not going to write your own account system, are you? You're not going to build your own delivery van. So why would you write your own scale-up process? So, the third option is just to follow a formula. This formula, the one we've been talking about, the scale-up formula. So this is the roadmap and the toolkit we've been working through in this webinar. It's tried and tested by many, many business owners, developed over 10 years, and I don't like to think of how many man hours, thousands and thousands of man hours. So at this point, I'd like to make you the traditional offer. And you should see appearing on your screen an offer for a Kickstart meeting. Okay, there's a free 1-hour online scale-up formula Kickstart session with me. We'll work through the roadmap, make sure you understand how to apply it, and you can ask any questions you need to about your specific business. How does it apply to my business? And you'll get a free copy of the guide to the process, the scale-up formula. It's an ebook which sets out the roadmap and all the stages we've talked through in the webinar. And I think at that meeting, we'll make sure we get a really good kickstart on applying the formula to your business. There's no obligation. I won't try and sell you anything. If you're interested, we can talk about how you get access to the Toolbox, which is something that I think would help a lot. But it's entirely up to you. And, of course, some people go to the webinar, have a meeting, and they become clients, which is great for me, and I hope great for them as well. In fact, okay, so we talked about, here's the Scale-Up Formula book, which is you'll get if you take up the offer. And these are some clients that have gone through this process over the years. A small selection of clients, ones with nice logos, really. And there's many more. And here's some kind words from clients about this process and how it's helped them with their business. Okay, so we've reached the end of the webinar. Thanks so much for attending. I'd really encourage you to, as I say, take action now. The action I'd encourage you to take is to click on that offer button. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's risk-free, no obligation, gives you a great kickstart. Okay, that's it. Got some time left for questions. Just bear with me while I sort this out. Okay. So here's a question from Sarah. She says, what if you don't have the right employees? I think, Sarah, you're probably assuming what most business owners assume. And, if clients ask me that, my response is always to say, but how do you know? It may turn out you won't have 100% superstars. But if you've never focused on developing them, never given them the framework to succeed, never given them the support to be accountable, you always run them in a particular way, it's kind of difficult to assess how they would work, how well they would turn out under a different regime. So my experience, for what it's worth, is that most, not all, but most really step up given the chance. So you'd be really unlucky if none of your employees were right. Next question is from Simon. He asks, what if I do all this stuff and the process gets worse? Okay, I think that's when we were talking about delegation. So what if I delegate, go through this process, and what happens if the process doesn't work as well? Well, it's a really good question. And the point is, it's probably not going to work as well straight away. If you've been doing it or making all the decisions, then you try to get someone else to do it. They might make the odd mistake. I mean, that's how you learn. And the important thing is the way you deal with those mistakes. Each mistake is a coaching and learning opportunity. So unless the problems stem from laziness or stupidity, which they shouldn't if you've done your assessment and chosen the right people, coaching and communications should get you to a point where the process is working better than it worked when you were making all the decisions. So don't take it back. If you take it back, you really undermine delegation. Okay, unless the ship is about to hit the rocks. And really, in extremis, if it's about to hit the rocks, grab the wheel. Otherwise, don't. All right, Iqbal has a question. Well, more of a statement. I've seen all this vision thing with pictures on the wall. It's a joke. Iqbal, we're not really talking about pictures on a wall. So the way I've described, because I've seen those as well, and I agree with you, they're a joke. But the way I've described it today, and the way the Scaleup formula works, is that you develop your vision with a team of people who are kind of got some skin in the game, want to be part of that vision. It doesn't require pictures on the wall. In fact, far from it. Really, your vision evolves, so you don't formalize it or produce large, mottos on the wall. It's a process, like much in management. It goes on and on. But yeah, if you try it too early with disengaged employees, it kind of does end up with pictures of people climbing rock faces. Not what we're looking for. Andy says, where does more money come in delegation? Okay, Andy, the answer is at the end. There's nothing wrong with a conversation about money. In fact, it's a good conversation. It means they recognize that they are contributing more to the business in a measurable way. So it's an opportunity for you to say, yeah, we're on the same page. If you achieve that, the business is helped, we're doing better. I want to share some of that with you. So don't start there is the thing. Don't start on a money. I'm going to give you some more money for taking this on, because you don't want cash operated employees. You want engaged employees. But nothing wrong with that conversation at the right time. Okay, time for one more. It's another one. Well, it's from Sarah. I think it's the same Sarah. What if you don't have time to do all this stuff? So, Sarah, there are really two types of business owners. There are those that are run by their business and those that run their business. And which type you are is a choice. It's your choice. And it's a choice you make every day. In fact, many times every day. What we've been talking about today is, if you like, a way to become the second type of employee, someone who runs their business as opposed to being run by the business. The Scaleup formula teaches you how to do this. And doing this, it is designed to free up your time. It's not going to consume more time. It's going to give you more time. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, well, we're out of time. I'd really like to thank you all for taking part, particularly the people who asked questions. You've still got a few seconds left to click on the offer. You've got lots to gain, nothing to lose. I'm really looking forward to talking to those of you who do decide to take action there. talking about your business and how to apply the Scaleup formula. And for now, goodbye.